James had always been an incurable romantic. From a young age, he dreamed of finding the love of his life, inspired by the enduring marriage of his parents, Grace and Robert, who shared a union of more than 4 decades. The couple was a living example of companionship and complicity, something that James aspired to for himself. At 32, James was a successful man in his career as an architect, but his love life was a series of ups and downs. He had a generous heart and a tendency to give himself completely in his relationships, often placing unrealistic expectations on his partners. One of his first serious relationships was in college, with a classmate named Olivia. The two shared a love for architecture and spent hours discussing projects and dreams for the future. James imagined they had found the perfect formula, love and passion in common. However, after graduation, Olivia decided to pursue a career in another state, and the long-distance relationship didn't survive. Years later, already established in his career, James met Sophia at a work event. She was a talented interior designer, and the two quickly fell in love. James dove headfirst into the relationship, planning a future together. However, after 2 years, Sophia confessed that she wasn't ready for the level of commitment that James desired, leaving him devastated. James's last relationship was with Emma, a yoga teacher he met on a spiritual retreat. Captivated by her serenity and worldview, James believed he had found his soulmate. For a year they lived intensely, but differences in lifestyle and long-term goals eventually became an insurmountable obstacle. Now, 2 months after breaking up with Emma, James found himself once again single and disheartened. Sitting in his cozy apartment, decorated with plants and paintings that reflected his refined taste, he absent-mindedly flipped through an old photo album, recalling happy moments from his childhood and adolescence. Grace, his mother, was a constant and loving presence in his life. A woman of medium height with impeccably arranged grey hair and a welcoming smile, Grace was known throughout the community for her tireless volunteer work. She dedicated much of her free time to various social causes, from animal shelters to adult literacy programs. It was precisely Grace's altruistic and sociable nature that led her to try, with an almost professional persistence, to arrange dates for her son. For her, the talent for uniting hearts was just another extension of her generous spirit. Every time she attended community events, craft fairs or volunteer meetings, she seemed to see potential partners for James everywhere. "James, dear, you won't believe it. I met a lovely young woman at the craft fair. She's a teacher, loves literature, just like you. And she has the most enchanting eyes I've ever seen," Grace would say, her eyes gleaming with expectation as she handed her son a cup of tea. James, in turn, was learning to deal with his mother's determination with patience and good humour. He always responded with a polite smile and a gentle excuse. "Mum, I appreciate your concern, but I prefer to let things happen naturally." Grace, however, rarely let herself be discouraged. For her, James's love was a puzzle she was determined to help solve, and each frustrated attempt only seemed to renew her enthusiasm. However, fate was about to intervene in a way that James could never have predicted. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Grace arrived at James's house with a special sparkle in her eyes. Her son immediately noticed that something was different. "James, I have wonderful news!" Grace exclaimed, barely containing her excitement. "The City Volunteer Association has decided to organise a big party to honour some of its most dedicated members, and I am one of the honorees." James warmly embraced his mother. "That's amazing, Mum. You deserve all the recognition for your hard work." Grace smiled, but her look suggested there was more. "Thank you, dear. And you know what's even better? I set aside 2 invitations for you." James raised an eyebrow, already anticipating what was to come. "Mum." I know," Grace hurried to say, raising her hands in a placating gesture. "You just ended a relationship. But James, this is a special occasion. Please, allow me to choose a date for you, just this once." James hesitated. He didn't want to disappoint his mother at such an important moment, but the idea of a blind date made him uncomfortable. However, Seeing Grace's hopeful look, he felt his heart soften. "All right, Mum," he finally conceded, "but on one condition. At least tell me her name." Grace smiled mysteriously. "Ah, that will be a surprise. But trust me, I'm sure you will like it." The weeks leading up to the party went by in the blink of an eye. James found himself torn between curiosity about his mysterious date and the natural apprehension of someone who had gone through so many romantic disappointments. On the night of the event, James got ready without much enthusiasm. He put on a well-tailored navy blue suit, adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, and ran a hand through his carefully combed brown hair. Looking at his reflection, he tried to muster a confident smile, but his green eyes betrayed a mix of nervousness and resignation. Arriving at the venue, an elegant event hall decorated with flowers and soft lights, James positioned himself near the entrance, eager to discover who his mysterious companion would be. His eyes scanned the flow of arriving guests, searching for any face that might be his mother's choice. Then he saw her. Time seemed to freeze. Among the crowd of unfamiliar faces, a figure appeared that James never expected to encounter again. His heart raced, and he felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. Amelia. She was even more beautiful than in his memories. Her long black hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, framing a face with delicate features. Her eyes, a deep brown, shone with a mix of surprise and something else that James couldn't decipher. She wore an elegant emerald green dress that highlighted her skin and her graceful silhouette. For a moment, James was paralyzed, unable to believe what he was seeing. Amelia and he had a history that traced back to childhood. Their mothers, Grace and Eleanor, were longtime friends and became pregnant just a few months apart. From a young age, James and Amelia were inseparable. They grew up together, sharing every important milestone of their lives. They played house in the backyard, exchanged confidences on camping nights in the garden, and dreamed about the future. It was common to hear them say, amidst childish giggles, "When we grow up, we'll get married." What began as an innocent childhood game blossomed into genuine love in adolescence. At 16, James mustered all his courage to invite Amelia to a school party. That night marked the beginning of a relationship that seemed destined to last forever. For a few but significant years, James and Amelia experienced an intense and pure love. They shared dreams, fears, and hopes. They planned college together and imagined what their adult life would be like side by side. To James, Amelia was more than his girlfriend. She was his best friend, his confidant, his other half. However, fate had other plans. When they were almost 18, Amelia's parents separated. Eleanor, her mother, decided to return to her home country, taking Amelia with her. The news dropped like a bomb in the lives of the young lovers. James still vividly remembered the last night they spent together before Amelia's departure. Sitting on the park bench where they used to meet, their hands intertwined and silent tears streaming down their faces, they made promises of eternal love and vowed to keep in touch. But, as so often happens, distance and time were relentless. The calls and letters became less frequent until communication ceased completely. James kept Amelia in a special place in his heart, but moved on with his life, convinced that that chapter had definitively closed. And now, there she was, standing a few meters away, so real and present that James had to mentally pinch himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Amelia was the first to break the silence. "Hi, James," she said, her soft voice bringing back an avalanche of memories. "I came back to visit my father, and your mother heard that I was in the country. She invited me to the party." James remained silent for a few seconds, still processing the situation. Finally, he found his voice. "Amelia, Wow. It's amazing to see you." The initial shock of the reunion soon gave way to a smooth and natural conversation. It was as if the years of separation had evaporated, and they were back to being the best of friends. They found a quiet corner in the hall and spent the entire night talking, barely noticing the party happening around them. Amelia talked about her life abroad, her career as a journalist, the trips she had taken, and the experiences she had lived. James, in turn, shared his professional achievements, his romantic adventures and misadventures, and how he never stopped thinking about her over the years. There was a comforting familiarity between them, as if they were resuming a conversation interrupted just a few days ago, and not years. They laughed at old inside jokes, reminisced about childhood and teenage moments, and discovered that, despite the changes and the time that had passed, the connection between them remained intact. As the night progressed, James felt his heart warm more and more. Amelia's presence brought back long-dormant feelings, now awakening with surprising intensity. He found himself admiring the way she animatedly gestured while telling a story, the sparkle in her eyes when she spoke about her passions, and the melodious sound of her laughter that he had missed so much. Grace, on the other side of the hall, watched the interaction between the two with a satisfied smile on her lips. She had always known, in her motherly heart, that James and Amelia were soulmates. Seeing them together again, so comfortable and happy, confirmed that her intuition was correct. In the days following the party, James and Amelia became inseparable. They seized every moment to make up for lost time. They met for lunches in charming cafes, strolled through the city parks reminiscing about the paths they used to walk as teenagers, and spent entire nights talking, as if they were trying to condense years of experiences into a few days. James rediscovered in Amelia not only the love of his youth, but an even more fascinating and compatible companion. She had become a strong, independent woman, passionate about life, qualities he had always admired. In turn, Amelia saw in James the same sensitive and dreamy boy from before, now matured into a confident and accomplished man. With each moment together, James felt the certainty grow that Amelia was and always had been the woman of his life. All his previous relationships, all his searches and disappointments now seemed to have been merely preparation for this reunion. However, a shadow loomed over this newly discovered happiness. Amelia had an established life in another country, with her job, friends, and the proximity of her mother. The time of her visit was coming to an end, and the prospect of another separation weighed heavily on both of them. One sunny afternoon, sitting on the same park bench where they had said goodbye years ago, James made a decision that would change the course of their lives. Looking into Amelia's eyes, he saw reflected all the love and all the possibilities the future could offer. "Amelia," he began, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. "These last few days have been the happiest of my life. Finding you again made me realize that I never stopped loving you. All the relationships I've had, all the pursuits, nothing compares to what I feel for you." Amelia looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears, a mixture of happiness and apprehension on her face. James continued, his determination growing with each word. "I know you have your life out there, your job, your friends. But Amelia, I can't let you go again, not without trying. I'm going with you." Amelia's eyes widened in surprise. "James, you can't just drop everything." "Yes, I can," he interrupted gently. "My job allows me to work anywhere in the world. What really matters is that we are together. You are the woman of my life, you always have been. Today I realize that my previous relationships never worked out because they weren't you." James then knelt before her, taking a small box out of his pocket. "Amelia, I know it may seem crazy, but I've never been so sure of anything in my life. Will you marry me?" Tears of happiness streamed down Amelia's face as she responded with an emotional yes. They embraced, sealing that moment with a kiss that carried years of love, longing, and promises for the future. 15 days after that meeting that Grace had arranged, in an intimate and moving ceremony, James and Amelia got married. Surrounded by family and closest friends, they exchanged vows of eternal love, promising to never let distance or time separate them again. Grace, with tears in her eyes, watched her son and daughter-in-law with a mix of pride and happiness. Her motherly instinct had always known that James and Amelia were meant for each other. Seeing her son finally find the happiness he sought so much was the greatest reward she could wish for. As the newlyweds danced their first waltz as husband and wife, their eyes locked on each other, it was evident to everyone present that this was not just a story of rekindled love, but the beginning of a new journey. A journey that James and Amelia would embark on together, ready to face any challenge the future might bring, strengthened by the love that survived time and distance. And so, what began as a meeting arranged by a well-intentioned mother transformed into the realization of a childhood love, proving that sometimes destiny just needs a little nudge to unite two hearts that always belong to each other. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.